this is National Master Jesse Cohen for Summit School of Chess with some more Quick Bites videos for you. Today, I'm going to be covering some more games from the 2021 Colorado Scholastic Online Championship. Again, there are two more candidate games that I'd like to go over today in contention for our Brilliancy prizes. As you may have known, we teamed up with Chess.com, who gave us 10 of their upgraded memberships to give out to some of our tournament winners, and we've decided that 2 of those are going to go to these Brilliancy prizes. So, without further ado, let's just jump in right to the games. So, this first game that I want to look at comes from, I can't remember exactly which round. I believe this is round 2. And this is Curtis Chun versus Kumar and Lennon. And let's just jump right in. So first of all, I've got to say, props to Curtis. I don't see many birds openings. For those who don't know, this is pushing your F pawn up 2 squares. Typically we say don't move pawns, your F pawn in the opening unless you have your coach's permission. That's what Funmaster Mike on Chess Kid says. And the reason is it just opens up that diagonal straight to your king. And there's all sorts of examples I could show you on things going terribly wrong. But Curtis is a very seasoned player, so I'm sure he knows what he's doing. When you know what you're doing, what this move does is it does gain some space, and it does control the e5 square. d5, knight f3, bishop f5, d4. Now this is a bit strange. Now what Curtis is basically doing is turning this into a stonewall structure. We'll get to that in just a second. e6, e3, knight f6, bishop d3, here, castles. So even though he hasn't played pawn to c3 yet, when he does eventually, I think he does, he's going to have what resembles the stone wall structure, okay? And it's just a kind of super solid opening. The main idea behind it is that it keeps a kind of lock on the position, especially on the e5 square where white loves to hop knights into. Lots of times white can build up some really powerful attacks by swinging this knight up to e5, and after black castles, playing ideas like rook f3 to g3 or h3, and the queen can swing over, and all sorts of powerful kingside attacks. That's typically what the deal is. But the drawback is a couple things. Number one is this bishop is just a bad, miserable piece that often needs to be fixed, and there's also some big weaknesses. e4 is a nice home for black pieces. Knight c6. I kind of disagree with this move. Typically, I would be challenging this position in the center a bit more with pawn c5. Knight c6, c3, bishop d6, knight e5. There that knight goes. Takes, knight e4. The difference here is that this knight is basically permanent. This knight is not. Queen b5. Clever move by Curtis, making an immediate threat to b7 and to c6. Bishop takes e5 is basically kind of a forced move. He doesn't want to lose a piece. And this isn't something that black really wanted to do, because after the takes back, this rook gets a nice open file, and that was black's good bishop, believe it or not. And actually now we've solved the problem of how to deal with that knight, because, again, the whole deal was that this knight can be kicked, but this knight can't be. Well, now we don't have to worry about that anymore, do we? So rook b8 saves on b7, knight d2, pawn a6 chases the queen, queen back, take, castles kingside. Now again, to the untrained eye, this position might not look so bad, but this position is quite miserable for black unless black plays perfectly accurate, okay? In this position, black needs to sense that things are very dangerous. And the reason is because realistically speaking, white has domination over the center. That should be danger sign number 1. And danger sign number 2 is if you really try to put yourself in black's shoes and think, how am I going to activate my pieces in a way that hurts white? How am I actually going to start an attack here of any kind? It's really tough. And black missed an important chance here. What black should have played here was d takes e4, queen takes e4, and queen d5. Quickly trying to mobilize the queen and offer a trade. Because again, here's what white's plan is, even though you might not sense it. Remember, when the center is locked like this, what often happens is an attack on the wing. And usually you should attack where your pawns are pointing. This is called the Jeremy Silman pawn pointing method. And so with all of this aiming over here, the rook, the bishop, the queen, there is so much going on over here. White is prepared to launch a pretty powerful kingside attack. And so trading off that queen would definitely limit this attack a lot. Instead, queen d7, you wouldn't think it. This is like almost a game-losing move. Not a blunder, but a big mistake. Queen g4. Curtis is trying to go for some bishop h6 type of lineups. Rook d8 tries to get out of those lineups. Bishop h6 anyway. What's the point? Even though black can defend, there's a very important concept that we must utilize as masters called probing, or sometimes referred to as inducing weakness. Against a strong opponent, they're not just going to be like, here is a big weakness for you to attack. Enjoy. They're not going to do that. However, you're going to have to try and induce your opponent to make moves that they don't want to make. By playing the move pawn g6, all these pawns get saddled on light squares. So what happens to the dark squares? They are weak. And guess who has a dark square bishop and who doesn't? Oh wait, that's us. Black is in big trouble. Rook f3, here comes the attack. Pawn takes pawn, rook h3. Now I've got to give it to Kumar. This next move is just fantastic. Again, I urge you, if you need to go back to this video and pause, take a moment here. Put yourself in black's shoes and think to yourself, if I were black, how would I actually try to improve my position and not get checkmated by this queen somehow getting like to f6 and checkmating me on g7? Or coming to h4 and trying to checkmate me on, how am I actually going to deal with that, okay? And Kumar remembers a very important rule, that the best defense against an attack on the wing is a counterattack in the center. And fearlessly, Kumar plays knight takes d4. What a move. This move is fantastic. It's exactly what the position needs. Pawn takes, queen takes check, bishop e3. Believe it or not, this is actually a mistake. What black or white should play here is realize what's about to happen, that the center is suddenly going to prove to be more important than what's happening on the wing, and should play rook e3 so that after queen takes e5, queen takes e4, queen takes b2, rook f1, we don't let black completely dominate in the center, and we still have nice active open pieces for this kingside attack. Instead, we played bishop e3, queen takes e5, queen h4, threatening mate, g7, queen g7, guarding it, bishop g5, trying to attack the rook, also trying to get into here, queen d4 check, actually a very, very important move, okay? And the reason being is that we don't want that queen to get trapped in there. If we simply play a move like rook to d5 by chance, after bishop to f6, black is toast. This queen has nowhere safe to go to, basically. This is a really bad situation. I think, maybe g5 might work out, but this is sketchy to say the least, okay? Instead, Kumar accurately played queen d4 check, not having that problem, and then rook e3. There's not a good way to block again. He's got to be really, really careful. If instead he plays moves like king h1, trying to maintain all these pieces over here, suddenly Kumar has ideas like queen d1 check, where the only way for white not to get back rank mated is queen e1, because if rook takes queen, then rook takes back, forces the queen to block in a back rank checkmate. That would be devastating, okay? So, again, Kumar keeps the play focused in the center. He makes sure to keep aggressive, knowing that if he stays too passive, he will lose. So after rook to e3 check, or after rook e3 blocking, rook to d5, another spectacular move. Really, really high quality move here. This actually protects the e-pawn. If white plays queen takes e4, we trade queens and snag back that bishop on g5. So white plays rook e1, guarding it. Now here, unfortunately, is where black finally makes another big mistake. In this position, technically speaking, black has won 4 pawns for the missing bishop. 4, and has a definite domination in the center, which is making it really hard for white to keep this attack going. And what black should simply do now is a consolidating move. Just f5. Just keep the pawn. Have this big, delicious pawn center that shuts down these rooks, and honestly, I think this position is approximately equal. Instead, queen e5 was played, trying to guard here by threatening here, but it doesn't quite work. Rook h3, threatening a mating idea again. h5, stopping it. Bishop f6. Now the bishop gets in that nice place, and then g4. Now, white is trying to rip open black to the maximum. This is going to get ugly. Check. Save the king. Trying to trade off rooks. We're okay with that, because we're going to try and rip you open. Bishop c3, multi-purpose move, trying to stop this newly created passed pawn, and also trying to get into f6 and maybe mate or skewer that king to the rook. E5 tries to shut it down. Pawn takes pawn because the queen got separated from it. And you got to imagine right now, even though you don't see it, they're in terrible time pressure. Let's fast forward. Boom, 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 boom. And eventually it gets this neat position. And I want to show you the finale here. The final move was rook f1. And then here, unfortunately, Kumar lost on time. But let's just see what would have happened if black would have taken what appears to be a completely free rook. By doing this, the queen lets go of the g6 pawn, and after queen takes g6 check, king h8 only move, queen takes rook check, king to h7, trying to avoid the taking of the e pawn with check, queen h5 check, just giving him one more chance to, deactivate or let us take the e pawn with check, and then queen takes e5, and yeah, this pawn is not to be feared. White can get out of any perpetual checks that black tries to create, and realistically, black is just losing with bishop c coming and all sorts of mating ideas. And so, yeah, even if he hadn't have flagged, this probably should have been a win for white. Although who knows, right? This was a really, this is a game that I almost could give a brilliancy prize to both sides. Curtis really did launch that powerful attack, that forcing of the knight trade, which opened up the file, and some really, really neat ideas. And then Kumar for that really brave knight takes d4 and complete counterplay in the center the way he should, focusing on that active play. Both of these players exhibited grandmaster qualities, and I think they will both go on to make excellent masters in the future if they keep it up. So again, that's game number 1. Let me know in the comments what you think. And here comes game number 2. All right, game number 2. Game number 2 is featuring, again, 2 players that if you're in Colorado, these names are not... this isn't like, who are these people? These are very well-known kids. They've been in the chess community since they were basically in elementary school and have grown up the whole way, just training and getting better and making us so proud. We've got Mukund Gurumurthy playing the white pieces, and we've got Griffin McConnell playing the black pieces. 2 amazing players, and especially if you don't know the amazing story about Griffin, take the time after this. I'll put a link in the video to an awesome video that was made about Griffin called Griffin's Gambit. The spectacular thing about Griffin is that, he has had some definite health issues in his life, and he has had to go basically a hemispherectomy, a hemispherotomy. For those who don't know, basically you have to disconnect like the left and right half of your brain because of seizures. It's a very, serious surgery, and he's had multiple, and despite all of this, Griffin just got out of surgery literally I want to say less than 20 days ago. And only 6 days into his recovery, or 16 days into recovery, decided to play in this tournament. He wasn't able to play the entire thing because he did get very tired. However, some of the chess he played is just this kid, I'm telling you, look out for this kid. Nothing can stop him. I'm not kidding. He's amazing. And also, Mukund, amazing player as well. Not having as many challenges, but again, he has the challenge of facing off against Griffin, which is the challenge itself. Let's take a look here. Knight f3, knight f6, g3, we got a King's Indian attack, yeah. d5, developing the pieces like normal. Everything's pretty normal here, going for kind of a reverse King's Indian. The first move I thought was a little bit odd here was knight f3. I thought as a reverse King's Indian that what Mukund was going to play was f3, bishop to h5, pawn to g4, bishop to g6, and pawn to knight to h3. As what is seen in many reverse King's Indian defenses, the idea is to then start pushing f4 and relocating that knight better, since it's not going to last on g5 anyway. Instead, I was surprised to see knight f3 by Mukund. a6, h3, bishop h5, g4. And now, a pretty interesting move by Griffin. Knight takes g4. He's not messing around. Pawn takes, bishop takes. Now, I want to say, in all honesty, black probably doesn't have enough compensation for the sacrifice. Black has destroyed 2 essential shield pawns for this king, and that does play into his safety, and that also will play a role. Black definitely has compensation for the piece. I just don't think it's full compensation. I think part of the reason is that even though white's king is weakened now, remember, a weakness is only as weak as it can be attacked. And in this position, black isn't really ready to quickly attack this king. Rook e1, knight d6. Here, Mukund should have found a better defense. He plays the move knight f1, which does make sense. He's trying to relocate pieces over to help the king. However, knight c4 would have been actually more accurate, getting the knight into a better place, getting the queen. But again, this seems scary over here, so I don't blame him for knight f1. Pawn to h5, knight 1 to h2, bishop back to d7, knight to d2. I know it seems really strange about what Mukund is doing, but he's trying to form a shelter. He's trying to think to himself, my opponent has 2 pawns and an attack on my king, but I have an extra piece. Therefore, if I can make sure my king is safe, make sure that those pawns don't do anything too crazy, and use my extra piece, if I can minimize his things and maximize on my things, I'm going to do great. So he comes up with this plan. He hits the queen here. He plays king f1 to get out of the pin. And then he kind of holds himself up on e2. And actually, realistically speaking, Mukund is doing a fantastic job. I think that he might have actually found more safety on h1, surprisingly, letting the h pawn actually act as a barrier. But honestly, I can't blame him for wanting to walk into this completely locked position, which explains why Griffin tries to open it. Rook to g1, attacking the queen with tempo. Can't blame that. Queen to f7. Pawn takes f5. Now, actually, this is not the best move, okay? It's kind of like this catch-22 move. On one hand, by taking this pawn, it really helps out this bishop. On the other hand, it's also starting to get rid of the structure that is mostly keeping this king safe, and then suddenly the unthinkable happens. Mukund does a move that, for every other variation, totally works except for one. He plays bishop e4. And to the untrained eye, this move just makes a ton of sense. We are trying to keep the position blocked up. I think that Mukund was scared that Griffin would play the move e4 and try to blow everything open with that king, so he's trying to kind of blockade it. He's trying to also maybe trade off bishops because, hey, when you're up in points, trading off is a good idea. But unfortunately, this falls to a basic tactic, which is this pawn is overloaded. This pawn is trying to defend the bishop and this knight at the same time. What do you do when you see an overloaded piece? Typically, you smash one of the things it's defending, because then it'll be overreaching. So we smash the bishop in this case, and when it takes back, guess what's not guarding the knight anymore? Kerpla. Now listen, we could say, how did Mukund fall to something so basic? Well, a lot of people said the same thing about Tal's opponents. They didn't say so basic, but they say, a lot of people argue, was Mikhail Tal, world champion, was he really that good? He played a lot of unsound sacrifices. Well, listen, everybody. If you have ever tried playing against a sacrifice where your king is on the run, you know that it's not so easy to find the best moves because you're trying not to get checkmated. And there's that kind of innate fear that you're dealing with of like, don't get checkmated, don't get checkmated. And, it's a dangerous place to be because suddenly you can just misstep like that. So again, here's what I'm saying. It's not an accident. It's not like just this fluke when a good player blunders in a stressful situation. Does that make sense? So after this, the game isn't too interesting for a little bit, but Griffin is able to trade off the queens and able to do a really, really nice endgame. I think the next part that I like the best is just kind of how he cleans up this endgame here. It's really hard to play White's position. At this point, Griffin basically does nothing wrong. He has 2 extra pawns, and he knows that an advantage is only as good as it can be used. So he's doing everything he can to use it. He's got this pass pawn over here, barely blockaded enough. He's got another pass pawn rolling. White is about to collapse. Rook h4, rook g4, trying to stop some of the incoming ideas that black might have. Check, here, and now here is just the finale. In this position, White thinks that maybe they can get away with knight takes bishop. Their idea is that they want to play, they're like, oh, look, it looks like I can take this pawn on d2. Bishop takes here, rook takes here, knight takes, rook takes, king takes. It should all be equal. It would be if black didn't throw in this in-between move, bishop g5, skewering us to the rook on d2. So white is logically taking the bishop on f6 first before doing this. There's only one problem. That knight was the only thing other than this rook trying to stop that pawn from becoming a queen. So after black takes back and now we take, Griffin hits him with the thunderbolt, rook takes d2. And at this point, Mukund realizes that if he takes that and takes back, you know, basically no matter what happens at this point, that pawn is going to become a queen. He's got nothing left, and he throws in the towel. So here's kind of where I'm at. On one hand, I personally think that the Curtis and Kumar game exhibited higher levels of mastery in certain areas. There were some crazy back and forths, and there were some crazy back and forths in both games. However, at the same time, I also am a strong favorite to look at Griffin for multiple reasons. For the fact that A, he sacrificed boldly in the opening to launch an attack on his opponent. B, he playing in this tournament at all after everything he's gone through is just like, holy cow, I don't even have words for that. And then the thunderbolt at the end, that nice little rook takes d2. You know, if he hadn't found that, it might have been a lot more difficult. Who knows? So yeah. Anyways, I'm a little bit torn, but I need to kind of have a decision by tonight. So if you can let me know in the comments, whether it's on Twitch or YouTube, wherever you've seen this, let me know who you think deserves the prize, and we're going to get these people their brilliancy prizes, and I cannot wait to see you next time. Anyway, this is National Master Jesse Cohen, Summer School of Chess, and I will see you. Oh, by the way, this Saturday, stay tuned. We are having the Invitational, the Colorado Invitational Scholastic Championship that's going to decide the 4 representatives for the state, the Denker, the Barber, the Rockefeller, and the Ruth Herring Award. That is going to be live. I'm going to be covering rounds 1 and 3 this Saturday. I'll be covering round 1 at 9 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, and round 3 at 2:30 p.m. Standard Time. So if you got nothing else to do, please tune in here. I can't wait to look at the best games that Scholastic Colorado has to offer. I will see you then. Bye for now.